It looks like I got cut off again. I'm not quite sure what happened. I think I was talking about public employee strikes and the question of threats of violence. That's just not an issue in the public service. It's extremely unusual to do that. But there are things that public employee organizations can do to get your attention. The police, for example, I hate to be always picking on the police, but they could sort of enforce the laws. All of the laws. And that would be extremely unpleasant if you're pulled over for a stoplight or a broken tail light and they examine the thread on your tire, that sort of stuff. The fire departments could conduct serious inspections of all houses, which would be, again, a really irritating sort of thing. I'm not sure what teachers could do or what general government employees could do, or in some cases, would anybody notice? If the librarians enforced all the laws that revolve around lending books out, would anybody notice? So I'm not too sure what happened there. I did want to mention one thing that will come up and that always comes up in the discussion of unions, and particularly around the strike issue, and that is, it's a 150-year-old argument now, I think, or maybe even older, that suggests that, well, if you don't like where you work, why don't you pack your bags and go? Now, that argument has been so thoroughly trashed around the world that it's sort of astonishing to understand that in the United States it's still seen as a valid argument, that there's some idea that somehow or other, as Proudhon has said, the rich person is just as free to sleep under a bridge as a poor person. The reality is people can't change their jobs. A, there are no jobs. B, the job that you could go to is precisely the same as the one that you're doing. C, it pays roughly the same and the working conditions are probably roughly similar. On top of that, if you're an adult, you presumably have some sunk costs in the community. Can you pick up and go? I mean, the mythology in the United States is yes, you can. The reality is it's extraordinarily difficult. Find out how difficult it is to sell a house and pick up a spouse who happens to be working. Take the kids out of school. Try doing that. Yeah, I do want to disabuse you of the idea that on a large scale, the idea that there's an equality between your ability to influence work and working conditions and pay and all things revolving around work and the management's ability to do the same things. And to suggest that there's some rough parallel equality is ridiculous. But it is a very, very common argument. And I hear it all the time. Well, you don't like it. Why don't you leave? Why should I have to leave a job that I enjoy just because you've decided to pay the shareholders more money? Why don't you give me it? I'm working hard for you. That's the logic on the private side. On the public sector side, it's a little bit more awkward because the reality is that a wage increase, well, first of all, it's incredibly labor intensive. So most of the money goes into paying people. And a pay raise for police means a halt or maybe a decrease in benefits for somebody else unless there's an increase in revenue. That then becomes a much more touchy issue and much more difficult to resolve. And that's why in this particular arena, public safety organizations, public safety unions are very, very powerful in comparison with other general unit employees, whether they work for the transportation or they work in public health. They're just not as powerful as public safety. Okay, guys.